Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Asad, how are you?
Good, good. How are you doing, Salim?
Very well, thanks.
Good to see you here.
Yeah, likewise.
I'm Irene. You muted.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
All right, it's 3:01. I think we should get started. And then we'll get more people joined in. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a joint webinar of the MEDJACK and Innovation Committee webinar series. The purpose of these webinars is to start a conversation around ICE, innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. For this webinar, we'll be using our book MEDJACK as a conversation starter. MEDJACK is AKU's first ever digital book and has been co-authored by a total of 14 co-authors. It is available on Amazon, and for Pakistan, it's available on a digital platform known as Kobo. We also have print copies of the book available. For this webinar, I would request our attendees to please turn their mics on mute, and you may enter your comments, suggestions, and questions in the chat space provided. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the moderator for today's session, Dr. Asad Mia, who is the Director for CCIT and Chairman of Emergency Medicine at AKU. Hi, Dr. Asad, how are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you, Marine. How are you doing?
Great, not bad myself. I would also like to welcome the speaker for today's webinar, Mr. Salim Sayani. Mr. Salim Sayani is the Director, Digital Health Resource Center, AKDN, and Technology Innovation Support Center, AKU. He also happens to be Chair of Innovation Committee. Within the Aahan Development Network, Mr. Salim leads multiple digital health initiatives in Asia and Africa. For the past 9 years, Mr. Salim has been leading and providing strategic support to public health projects and programs funded by multilateral donor organizations, including the AKDN Digital Health Program and many others. So good to have you here with us, Mr. Salim.
Thank you, Mariam. It's great to be here.
And now I'll hand over the mic to Asad to take the conversation ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Marine. Hello again, Salim, and it's a great honor and a pleasure to be moderating this session with you. Our interaction goes back several years, and when I guess it was 2013 or 2014, perhaps, when I had joined. 2013 is when I joined AKU, and then late 2013 or 2014 started talking to you about at that stage it wasn't about innovation per se, it was just about digital health, because I wasn't adding 2 and 2 together, and I wasn't like considering things within the realm of innovation per se. So start building up, and then we start interacting further. So that was just a bit of history, and we'll get into that, because I think it's interesting that the chapter that we picked for starting the conversation with you is chapter 1 of the book, which is the alpha of the book, and that chapter was drafted or authored by Walid Faruqi, and Walid's currently in the US now. He's working over there. So that chapter takes the reader through a contextual history of a healthcare innovation incubation hub, that's CCIT. What was the need for it? How was it set up initially? Who were the early team members, early challenges and opportunities? And what was the modus operandi or the innovation continuum or spectrum? And so you've been very familiar with the innovation ecosystem building within AKU and past that as well. And so typically what happens with these webinars, Salim, is that Marine or I, for the folks who are not familiar with the book, we have like a very brief PowerPoint, which takes the people, gives them a bird's eye view of the book. But we've stopped doing that because our webinars have been ongoing for almost a year and a half now. So we kind of assume that people know what this is about. But in case people are unsure, this is the MEDJACK webinar series, which was co-hosted by the Innovation Committee this time. And we use a chapter from the book MEDJACK. It's got 10 chapters, and we use one of those chapters as a conversation starter. And today's session is with Mr. Salim Sayani, and the conversation starter is chapter 1 of the book. And the title of the book, of the chapter, is Setting the Stage from Skunkworks to Organizations Spanning Innovation Hubs. So with that kind of overview, I'm just going to dive right into the conversation, the questions. So in terms of the need for an innovation or early stage incubation hub, Salim, my first question to you is, what do you think is the need for such a hub at a place like AKU or an academic institution in a low resource setting, low middle income country setting? Do you think it's needed? Do you think it's just a privilege to have something like this, or do you think there's a real need? And if you could just expand on that based on our experience. Thanks.
Thank you, Asad. So first of all, a little bit about the book, MEDJACK. I have read this book with great interest, and I found it very intriguing and interesting. So thank you for having that book, because I think that that was something that was needed for folks to actually know how innovation ecosystem is built, and what are the needs and what are the gaps, and how we can bridge those gaps in a very frugal way. So thank you for having published that book. Now, coming to your question. So, you know, the research universities such as AKU, it is not a luxury for universities such as AKU to have that ecosystem. It is a necessity, because, you know, one of the mandates that we have as a research-led university is to add to the body of knowledge, right? Add new knowledge to the body of knowledge. That is one. And sometimes what we do is we find out a problem, we go in the field, we do research, we have a research question, we have hypothesis, we try to prove it or otherwise, and then we analyze, and then we conclude, and then we have a recommendation, and then we publish a paper. Once paper is published, most of the time, our journey stops. So that is a big challenge in all universities, not just in low LMICs, right? So idea is to complete that cycle. And when I say cycle, what I mean is been conducted, then that research should result in one of these few things. Either it should result in a service or a product or a business model or a process or a policy paper that would influence policy, right? So publishing is good, but that is half of the journey. So in order for us to, for universities to go through that cycle completely, we need innovation hubs and then ecosystems within the university who would actually promote development of product, for example, development of service, development of business model, right? We do a good job in writing policy papers, but other areas, we struggle. And it's not just us at AKU, it is a global challenge, right? So, and then you will see schools and universities that are successful in addressing this challenge. They would have a very comprehensive ecosystem where they promote innovation, where they promote this critical thinking. So to answer your question, it is a necessity. It is our mandate to have that type of ecosystem rather than thinking that this is a luxury we can live without.
Great, thank you for getting us started. So just as a follow-up, perhaps to that. So the first question was, okay, so what do you think is there a necessity or a need for an innovation incubation hub? Let's ask you about your own experience as a digital health and a technology innovation support person or an expert in this area, digital health per se. What has been your personal experience or personal journey where technology innovation is concerned? And tell us a bit about your own journey, and then I'll have some follow-up questions on that. Before you start answering, so for all our viewers, this is meant to be a very interactive session. I'm just going to have a few questions to get this conversation going, but we would love to hear from you. So if you could put your questions or comments in the chat box, then we'd be happy to kind of interrupt my Q&A with Salim, and then we'll just ask him what questions are, what are your questions or what are your thoughts, and you can always unmute and then speak up as well. So please don't be shy. Okay, back to you, Salim.
Thank you, Asad. So you asked about my journey and what it means to have ecosystem established when it comes to digital health and innovation otherwise, right, in healthcare space. So my journey has been very interesting and very colorful. So, and then you can relate to it when I say that, right? So it is always full of challenge, and I love it because, without challenge, it really gets really dull and boring. And I personally don't like boring stuff. So in my opinion, Aisha, can you put yourself on mute, please? Sia, sorry. Yeah, thank you. So with respect to creating an innovation ecosystem, if I can just talk about my experience, that what has worked for me and what I've seen working is a stepped approach, right? So in order for us to have a system that works for all of us, and it produces a result that we like to see. So there are 4 steps in my opinion, right? The first one is having a clear vision, because you need to have a clear vision of what you want people to believe in, right? So that is very critical, because if, first of all, you need to believe in that vision, and then you need to be able to articulate that vision very clearly so that people understand it, right? So that is very important. The second step is having that clear vision. And then the second step would be to actually publicize that vision, educate people about that vision. What is your vision, right? So that you can get their buy-in. That is very, very important. And also having a vision is helpful, but it doesn't do the job. Because when you combine your vision, roadmap for you to act upon, right? So you need to have a clear roadmap, a vision, clear vision, and a roadmap that how you're going to achieve that vision that you have, and then communicate that to folks, right? People who would be very critical to implement that vision, or people who would benefit from that vision, right? So all this stakeholders. So stakeholder engagement becomes then very important as a third step. So you need to engage all stakeholders. And in this case, it could be your faculty in a university setting. It could be your staff. It could be your students. So all these segments, these are your stakeholders, right? And then fourth and very important aspect is you need to develop your champions, because you cannot be everywhere, you cannot talk about it enough. So you need to have champions that you develop and then empower so that they can talk about your vision. They can, it becomes their vision, and then you promote it. And once that happens, then success is, in most cases, it is guaranteed.
Great. Okay. So based on these four points that you've raised, you believe that your personal innovation journey has been enriched because you follow these points. And is this like a kind of a linear pathway, or would you delve a bit further into that? Do you think this happens like somewhat in a, in a connected manner? It could be circular versus a linear thing from one point to the end, from a start to the end, or iterative cycles or circles of that? What's been your experience of these 4 points?
Yeah, so it is very interesting question. So it is a combination of both, right? So you need to, so there are 2 steps that you need to make sure that they happen in a sequence, having a vision and then having a roadmap. So you need to have vision to have a roadmap. So it is sequential. Once that happens, then everything else, the other 2 steps, they can be iterative, and they can be on an ongoing type of journey for you, because you cannot have stakeholder engagement just once. It is an ongoing process, right? And you cannot just develop your champions once and then forget about them. So that is, again, an ongoing process. So that is an iterative process, and you provide more and more information, more and more clarity as you get to your champions, so that they can articulate your message effectively, right? So sometimes we think that this is a linear type of process, which it is not. Part of it is first 2 steps, but once you have developed those 2, then it is an ongoing process for you to keep your stakeholders engaged and keep your champions up to date on the information and the progress that you're making and the challenges that you're facing. That is also very important for your champions to know your challenges so that they can talk about those as well. So setting expectation is so important, because sometimes you feel that, oh, wow, we have a problem, and then there's an innovative solution that can solve all problems. That is not the case. We need to be adaptive in so many ways. So learning from our challenges is very critical.
Excellent. So it's a combination of linear and cyclical, iterative. Love it. Love the way that you've described that. So just once more for the audience, this is your time. So feel free to put your questions, comments about digital health, technology, and innovation. Salim has such a rich experience of working within the AKDN network. So from East Africa to Central Asia. And so mine of information, right? So please do ask your questions and comments. If you have something specific that you'd like to ask about digital health, then Salim's a guy for you, okay? So Salim, going back to chapter 1 of this book, MEDJACK, it delves into the characteristics, if I may, or the parameters, not a very rigid way of looking at parameters, but guiding principles, perhaps, that CCIT from the very early stage, from the get-go, we kind of said that, okay, we don't want to, and without really knowing much about the specs of innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, because you're just kind of learning and then making our mistakes and then learning further, and not really delving too much into the academic side of innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. But we said, okay, we want to be non-hierarchical. We want to be transgenerational. And third, we want to be interdisciplinary, not necessarily in that order, but those were the 3 guiding principles, if I may. And what do you think about those principles for innovation, for creativity and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so reflecting on CCIT's work over last few years that I've seen, and I've seen it very closely working with you and others in CCIT, and such a fantastic job that CCIT is doing in this space. So I think CCIT's role when it comes to entrepreneurship, promoting innovation. So I look at it as the entire spectrum of innovation and a product cycle, so to speak, right? And a product could be a service, it could be a business model, or it could be a process. So I see that CCIT plays a critical role when it comes to early ideation and ideation, right? This is where you actually thrive. The CCIT thrives because you CCIT engages people at the grassroots level, students, faculty, and staff. So that is very, very important. That engagement is a gold mine for somebody like me, because then I can help develop that further. So when I say I mean the downstream type of innovation spectrum. So I see CCIT as an upstream where you have a very good model for ideation, pre-ideation, ideation, and then early prototyping as well to some extent. And once that is done, then I think you hand it over to downstream, where we have a technology innovation support center or digital health resource center, where we can further elaborate and then go through different iterations of the product on the prototype and validate that. And then we go through IPR, which is intellectual property rights protection. So we file for patents, and then that opens up a possibility for revenue generation for the university as well as for the innovators. And I'm sure you're well aware of the new IP policy that we were able to change from our previous policy, and you led that effort for us, which was fantastic. So now, sometimes, people ask questions, faculty and students, what's in it for me? If I give this idea to the university and then what university works on it, what do I get in terms of financial value? So there is now something that people can get out of this as a financial value. So I hope I answered your question.
You did actually answer, I guess, somewhat another question, but it's really good because you've kind of mapped out for this for the audience this really intriguing, interesting ecosystem, innovation ecosystem within AQ, where you've described the upstream players, CCIT being one of them, and then you've got downstream players, and so how this crosstalk between upstream and downstream players, so that it's kind of like on a on a conveyor belt, so that things get done, things get added or whatever, and then the more advanced version then gets handed over to another team that has an expertise of a separate nature. So I think that's really cool that the way you've described that. But I'm just, so my question was about being non-hierarchical in innovation. Whether you think that being non-hierarchical, transgenerational, with the young and the old working together without necessarily having that hierarchy, that somebody is a teacher, the others are students, and then third thing was interdisciplinarity of innovation, right? So if we're talking about health innovation, is it really the domain of doctors alone, or no longer the case, right? So interdisciplinarity. So if you could comment on that, because that's what CCIT has been pushing for all along, that in order for innovation to prosper or blossom, you've got to do away with hierarchy. You can't have somebody being senior or acting senior and the others just saying that, okay, we are here to lap up your wisdom and we are juniors, right? So doing away with hierarchy and then young and the old together, and then having people other than just physicians, right? So you've got nursing, you've got techies, you've got IT, business, humanities and social sciences, and so a mix of folks. So that was what I wanted. I was curious to know what you thought about that kind of a mix. If you could address that, and then we can go on to some comments and questions that are also being added now.
Great, sure. So when it comes to hierarchy, I don't think hierarchy is needed or necessary when it comes to innovation. However, sometimes what we do, we don't differentiate in being non-hierarchical versus non-structured. So structure is very important for any innovation. So sometimes we perceive that if we say there's no hierarchy, it means there is no structure. So a structure needs to be there. And then you need to have freedom within that structure to do whatever you want to do. So you should have freedom, but under certain guidelines, certain structure. So this is where you can produce tangible results within a reasonable time frame. That is very important. Otherwise, you know what happens, I've seen this time and again, that you have a project that never ends. You have a wish list that keeps expanding because you know you want it to be perfect. You want to add everything under the sun. So structure needs to be there, and it doesn't need to be not necessarily in a hierarchy, right? So, and when it comes to multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary teams, I think it is very important to have multidisciplinary teams and interdisciplinary teams, because that is how you get different ideas. And then, you know, one person may have a very good idea, but the other person with different expertise can actually augment that idea or the solution, right? So it is very important. Healthcare problems and solutions is not in the domain of healthcare experts only. You can have doctors, you can have nurses, you can have allied health workers, you can have technologists, you can have business folks, and all those people. So it is important. It is important to have a multidisciplinary team. But you know what is really important is to actually have that vision, again, that vision for multidisciplinary team to be out there. And one, you have to have that vision. Two, you should be able to communicate that vision and promote that vision, because people should feel comfortable in knowing the fact that if CCIT is conducting or organizing a hackathon, then everyone from all these walks of life and areas of expertise, they are needed and they are welcome.
Fabulous.
And
thank you.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. You were saying something.
No, I think I was just saying that I think I answered your question now.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. And you also gave us a great insight into the ecosystem, right? Because that was one of my questions as well. And it does, there's a link between those two questions. So I'm just going to go to the chat box. So Armugan is asking Salim, he's saying, thank you for your great insight and sharing your knowledge. What are your recommendations for encouraging the local communities of Pakistan to uptake and use digital health tools?
Interesting question. So I think, first of all, we need to be sure of the service that we offer. For example, telemedicine, right? So there is this application. I don't know, we have about 21 folks here, including me and you. I don't know how many of us actually know that we have a mobile Android-based application that Akhan Health Services uses to promote non-urgent care virtually. So this is an app that you can actually register yourself and pay on within the app, schedule an appointment, get your virtual consultation, video consultation, get your medication and all that stuff. And you don't have to leave your home. So I think the challenge is that we need to be able to educate people of the services that are available. And they need to have comfort level to be able to use those services. What I have found, and based on my experience, is that sometimes people don't feel comfortable because people are so culturally used to feel and touch. So when you go to see a doctor, doctor would shake your hand, and then there would be a feel and touch type of thing, so that you feel comfortable. Doctor has seen me. But COVID was a blessing in disguise because now people are using technology. A lot of technology is being used in last 2 years, more than in last 1 decade, right? So I think the key is people should know what services you have, and then they should have trust. So building trust in your product and your service is equally critical. So I think that is also very important.
Great, thank you. Digital health, a separate session on digital health is probably going to be required because you just kind of getting to the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that we could learn from you about digital health. But I'm just going to keep moving with these questions now because they're piling up. So Nida Saeed is asking, hello, truly an interesting take on the process or steps of innovation dissemination. How would one tackle such a process if there's a lack of innovation culture in the organization or environment one participates in?
Yeah, so it is more of a systems question rather than innovation. So I think, again, what Asad, you had said earlier is that creating that environment, that is very important. So if we don't have that environment where people are supportive or the system is supportive of innovation, then it becomes very difficult, right? So I think the focus should be on creating that environment and to see what are the steps that we need to take to ensure that we have an enabling environment when it comes to promoting innovation. Because, when you talk to any business, one of the areas that they all focus on without fail is bottom line, right? What is my bottom line, and how whatever you're suggesting impacts my bottom line. So if you can make a business case that, well, by doing what I'm suggesting you to do, Mr. Manager, this is going to have this impact on your bottom line. It is going to increase your profitability, or it is going to reduce your cost, right? So if you can make that case, then you are actually creating that enabling environment, and that is going to be very helpful for you.
Great, thanks. And so for folks, if you can get your hands on the book MEDJACK, then it delves into this specific question. Salim gave us some really interesting insight on this. And then in the book, you'll also come across other insightful ways of actually enhancing your innovation ecosystem of the organization. So simple, straightforward interventions that can be done. And interestingly, we've also been learning that there's a way of benchmarking innovation as well. And Salim, you're aware of this, right? So what we're getting into is that when you don't have an innovation ecosystem, you could still start gathering a baseline so that you can gauge for yourself whether your teams or yourself, are you truly innovative, or are you just perceiving yourself to be innovative or not very innovative, conversely. And then you can measure that baseline, and you can even enhance that baseline and this is based on evidence and data as well. So it's a data-driven approach. Okay, so Sidra Kamal is asking, she's put a few questions here. I'll just read out the first of the questions over here. Does our organization have a fully baked digital strategy along with innovation aspects? And do you plan to extend that to other regions of Pakistan? That's an interesting question. Do we have a digital innovation strategy, Salim?
Yeah, so it is an interesting question, of course. And we do have within AKDN, we do have a roadmap of digital health and innovation. And then for innovation within AKU, we have a document that is available, and Asad, you're well aware of it, innovation ecosystem, and then how it is integrated, or it should be integrated, and what are the different parts and players of this ecosystem within AKU. Now, when it comes to country, so we have been asked by Department of Health in Gilgit-Baltistan and in KP to actually provide them or help them with a digital health strategy and a roadmap. So we are actually working on that. We have worked with other countries to advise on their digital health strategy, like in Kenya. And we are working also in other countries, such as Kyrgyz Republic, to provide them with some guidance. So based on our experience in digital health, AKDN has one of the largest digital health network that we have in the region, and in Asia, South and Central Asia, and in East Africa. So yes, the governments, they come to us, and then we work very closely with them to provide them some guidance. But I think at the end of the day, our goal is that we don't want to write something for them. We want to work with them so that they have ownership. And then they are responsible to carry out those steps and then walk on that roadmap.
Great. Like I said earlier, I think this topic of digital health is pretty vast. And I think in the future, we should just dedicate a session to digital health itself. And maybe just for jogging our memory. So what's the difference between e-health and d-health, digital health versus electronic health? So I know I've been guilty of actually interchanging the two, but you know, you could kind of guide us as to what is what.
Yeah, so you know, digital health and e-health, mostly people use it interchangeably. But digital health, it covers a wider scope, so that it covers not just the applications or modalities of providing enhanced access to healthcare services. It also covers, let's say, devices, for example, right? So biomedical devices and e-learning, for example. So all that is part of, in my opinion, it is part of digital health. And so initially, WHO, they started calling it e-health, and then they changed it, and they started calling it on a wider scale, in a wider umbrella, like digital health, and we adapted to that.
Great. So Salim, there's a question from Hussein. Based on your experience, how do you think are low-income countries or low-middle-income countries doing in terms of digital innovation? And what can we learn from first world countries in terms of digital innovation? So please tell us that.
So every country is different, and every country has a different level of commitment when it comes to providing access to healthcare services, and especially using technology to do so. So we cannot just have LMICs in one bucket, because Pakistan now is proving to be making a lot of progress in digital health and in using technology, for example, as compared to Afghanistan, there we have so many challenges. Kyrgyz Republic is moving forward and making a huge in digital health and using technology as compared to Tajikistan, that may be lagging behind. So different countries, they have different approaches. But what I have learned based on my experience is there is so much that we can learn from first world countries. But at the same time, because that is known fact that we can learn from North, right? Global North. But what people don't know is that what can people learn from Global South? Because there's so much that we have done in Global South when we talk about LMICs that people in North and in North America and Europe, they can actually learn from us. So one example would be, the major problem that I'll just give you one example. And that is that one of the patents that we filed a few years ago was based on a problem that we had identified that it was around patient safety and litigation against health systems. So as you know, the global challenge is everywhere, right? Is that sometimes when patient is operated, patient is open and then patient is staged up, and unintentionally, unknowingly, there's some stuff left in the patient, right? Recently, there was this news article there from Calgary that there was this lady who had come for a surgery. She left after surgery, 2 days after surgery. She went home after 10 days. She has excruciating pain, lower abdominal pain. She came back to the hospital and they found out that there was part of the battery that was left in the patient. So huge problem, huge patient safety challenge, as well as liability on health system in terms of litigation, right? So what we have done is that we worked on an idea that how we can use technology, augmented reality, virtual reality, and AI to have a smart OR. So we patented that idea in 2017, I believe, and we got a patent in the US. So we have a patent. Now we are working on a clinical trial. So if this works, then think about the usability of this, not just in Global South, but everywhere, because this is problem. It's a big problem in North America and in Canada and in Europe, as much as it is in low resource settings.
That's a great example, and I think trickle up innovation
Exactly.
would be what what you're describing. That something that's developed in the Global South then becomes of such value to the Global North that they start kind of like working on that idea, and then it spreads over there as well. So trickle up innovation, great example.
And I think your chapter 1 actually talks about that. So yeah, good connection.
Okay, so Essen has a question. What are your thoughts on the complex regulatory framework in Pakistan, which makes it very difficult for startups to survive? More specifically, Pakistan's macroeconomic landscape is highly volatile, with the Pakistani rupee rapidly depreciating due to unfavorable balance of payments, rising geopolitical tensions, and a fluid political regime. How can startups survive all of this? You are going to be the savior for all startups, Pakistani startups.
Okay, all right. So it is very easy for me to say I don't know, but I won't do that. I think you're right. It's a huge problem. But that makes it more interesting, right? So so entities such as Accelerate Prosperity, Ignite. These are some of the entities. They are actually providing all the support and all the help that they can provide to startups, especially in healthcare. So recently, we working with Accelerate Prosperity, we managed and hosted National Health Incubator for Pakistan cohort, and Asad actually led that. So all this financial crunch that we have and rupee devaluing, so devaluation of rupee as well as the regulatory environment, you can manage most of that if you have a grant. Worry about funding that much. But what happens is that in order for you to get funding, seed funding, for example, $100,000 dollars, that was NIHP seed money, I think the ultimate prize. So there was a company who got it and they actually were able to take their product to the next level. So in terms of regulatory environment, I don't think we can do something immediately to address that. However, to address funding issue, I encourage all these startups to look for funding, seed money that is available out there. And there's a lot of seed money actually that is available out there. So we just need to look at the right place, and we need to have a right problem that we are trying to solve. You know, most of the time what happens with startups, and it is unfortunate, that we find we have a solution, we work on a solution, and then we try to find a problem to fix. So that is because, you know, sometimes we say, well, this is cool, this is exciting, this is very intriguing, without looking at the problem, if there's a problem that exists. So that is very important for us to make sure that we are looking at the problem and then coming up with a solution, rather than, you know, getting intrigued by technology and possibilities.
Great. Thank you, Salim. So you're raising some really interesting and important points. So just to reiterate, because a lot of our audience are young folks who are budding innovators and entrepreneurs. And so, Essen, the question is really good. But I think what Salim is stating, in other words, is that, you know, not to get discouraged by the poor funding environment, or let's say the devaluation of the Pakistani rupee and the geopolitical scenarios, which will not end. Actually, they'll probably worsen, and climate change is going to worsen as well. And so does that mean that we stop creating, innovating, and entrepreneuring or intrapreneuring? Actually, quite the opposite. I think those are challenges that will identify very interesting problems for us that we will be passionate to address, regardless of, that's been my journey as well, that, you know, you don't really worry too much about, okay, well, to an extent you need to worry about, okay, where the money is going to come from so that you can sustain your innovation incubation hub, hint, hint, Salim. But, you know, overall, I think you just kind of figure that where there's a will, there's a way, and you keep at it, you keep chipping away, in other words, I guess. And so easier for me to say, because I'm talking about an entrepreneurial model. I'm already part of an organization, and so I'm being entrepreneurial. For some of you or several of you, you probably will be truly entrepreneurial because you will have your own startups outside of an organization. Easier for me to say these things, but I think the challenges will force you to think about the really important problems that you want to pick up and then address, and be passionate about them, and then you know, so on and so forth. So thank you for that, Salim. So this is a very interesting question by Sidra around COVID-19, right? So if COVID-19 regulations are relaxed, what happens to telemedicine and digital health? When the public health crisis begins to subside, that may leave the future of the use of telehealth and digital care tools up in the air. What do you say to that?
Very good question. Yeah, good question. And I don't agree with that. And I tell you reason why I don't agree, because the telemedicine, when we think about telemedicine, usually we think about an urban setting, right? That, well, in Karachi, for example, so that people don't have to travel to AKU to get certain treatment or a consultation, and they can sit at home and do that. So that is good. That may reduce when we don't have any COVID, and inshallah that time will be soon. I hope that we will not have COVID restrictions. So, but you know, telemedicine is very important, and in fact, that is the only way to access healthcare in rural settings. So think about, I don't know how much you know about north of Pakistan. So northern Pakistan is very far and remote areas where we have. So think about this village that is all the way up near Kunjarab Valley. It's called Sus. So if you live in Sus, need a clinical expert, you have an option to go to Gilgit Medical Center, which is the nearest medical center that would provide that type of service. And it is about good for maybe 5 hours or maybe longer travel by road. So think about impact that you will have on environment by driving or getting from point A to point B. And also think about the time that you will invest in, and think about the money that you will invest in. So telemedicine is always going to be there. So my experience has been before COVID that telemedicine was a huge need, and it was addressing a huge need. And there is a paper that we actually published in 2020 before COVID. It shows that with an investment of $2 million in 4 countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyz Republic, we were able to save $9.1 million in just cost avoidance for beneficiaries. And we were able to save 213 years worth of a time in 5 years. So if you're interested, Asad, I can share that link to that paper, and you can circulate that. But to answer the question, telemedicine is going to stay because that is the future. Primary care is going to be all digital care, in my opinion, in next 3 to 5 years.
Great. Yes, please do share the link, and then we are happy to kind of, put it on our Facebook page or social media, and then we can. And actually, there are a bunch of questions and comments about digital health, and so if people are interested, is it okay if we just redirect them to you, Salim, and they can?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Get in touch with you. So Lareeb has an interesting question. Lareeb Khan is from Radiation Oncology. So we find many applications of digital health innovations like 3D printing in radiation oncology, and we are planning to get some of our gadgets made utilizing 3D printing. Can you guide in this regard?
Absolutely. And actually, we do have 3D printers here, a farm of 3D printers within AKU, and we are actually working on some exciting stuff on how we can augment education, medical education with 3D printing. So neurosurgery is a good example. There's a very good use case. And AR, VR, we are also using that. So yeah, by all means, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to advise.
That's great. Which actually, this also ties into another question that I had for you as part of as the chair for the innovation committee. What are new projects or new thoughts, new ideas that you might have, or who are they? Maybe if you could also let the audience know who are the folks that are part of the innovation committee.
Sure, I'll be happy to. So again, it is a multidisciplinary team, as you talked about earlier. So Innovation Committee has representation from education, from health, and from media, just to name few. So School of Islamic Civilization also has membership there. So we believe that innovation is not just technology innovation, and it is not limited to just medical education or service delivery. So the few projects that come to mind when it comes to Innovation Committee is, I can think of impact of what we're trying to do is we're trying to see what is the impact of digital health and telemedicine on environment, on reducing carbon footprint. So that is very, very crucial and important for us. So we are exploring that. We are also exploring in Kenya and Tanzania how digital innovations and interventions can help in agriculture sector. So that is a huge deviation from a healthcare sector, right? So working with the media innovation hub in Nairobi that we have, we are exploring those opportunities as well. And as I said earlier, there are some very exciting virtual reality on top of we are piloting, working with neurosurgery department within AKU to see how we can augment our medical education using mixed reality, for example, right? And then also 3D printing. So yeah, these are some exciting projects.
Larev has a follow-up question. Can we as residents become a part of this team? I'm very much interested in digital health fellowship to bring an impactful change.
Absolutely, yes. So please reach out to me.
Great. Actually, it's interesting because as part of the innovation fellowship, there is a digital health component to that as well. So interesting. So we have about 5 minutes left, and we've got a lot of questions from Sidra. Sidra, maybe I could just like connect you to Salim, and you can. What do you believe? Okay, what do you believe is the role of AI in healthcare, Salim? It's a very
That is the
open-ended
future.
question.
So that is the future of healthcare, because with the shortage of experts, clinical experts, no matter where you go, I think AI is what is needed and what will actually be the future of triaging and providing first level of care. So, and we can talk more about it. Yeah, but that is the future.
So as just as a recap or a wrap up, perhaps, Salim, we'd like you to kind of give a message. What's your message for students, innovators, entrepreneurs looking to innovate using low cost processes of innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship?
So a couple of things, right? So first, do what you love to do. And sometimes we worry about money. So if you do what you love to do, money will follow. So that is first. Don't worry about money. And it is sometimes it is a cliche, but it really works. That is the fact. Don't worry about money. Follow your heart. Follow your passion, and money will follow ultimately, right? So that is one. And second, in this journey as an entrepreneur, that you will fail. So don't be afraid of failure. I think the key is fail fast and move on, and learn from it and move on. Sometimes what we do is we just get stuck in one idea, and then we try to improve, and then we get frustrated, and then we lose our resources, and sometimes it is not practically possible for us to move forward. So key is to fail fast and learn and move forward. Go to the next idea, because you will have maybe 100 ideas. Out of that, you will work on 10, and out of that, maybe if you're very lucky, you will have one idea that will be the idea that you were looking for, and that will make you some money. So key is be consistent, and also be persistent, and fail fast.
Excellent advice. And with that, and 2 minutes to spare, I think we can call it a day. Thank you very much, Salim, for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, guidance. Actually, I would say also where digital health and tech innovation, 3D printing even, although we just kind of barely got into it. But if people are interested, please feel free to reach out to us, and then we can connect you to Salim, or actually most of the folks over here are from AKU, so you know how to get hold of Salim. And then Salim, would love to kind of have you come back at a subsequent session, and then perhaps we talk about a specific component such as digital health and how that's kind of like spreading across Pakistan, and and within the network, AKDN network as well, and so how things are looking, and is it truly going to be revolutionary? Like I keep hearing that digital health is going to be a revolutionary thing for healthcare in low resourced economy, well, the world over. So perhaps that would be interesting to get into. Zahra Zaidi is dialing in from JHU, which is Johns Hopkins University. Can you please provide contact information, how to reach you? Salim, you want to put your email there, or?
Yeah, it is my first name dot last name at aqu.edu,
Okay.
but I'll put it out there.
Okay.
Or you can do that. Okay, Asad, I saw you doing it. Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Okay, I can do that. salim.sayani@aqu.edu.
Yeah.
There we go.
Perfect. And Asad, to answer your question, yes, I'll be very happy to come back at an appropriate time to talk about digital health. Yeah, let's have that discussion.
Great, thank you. And thank you everyone for being here. And let us know how we're doing. You can always send in your suggestions and you know, what should we be talking about, using the book as a starting point, as a conversation starter, so on and so forth. Do get hold of the book and read the book, and let us know how we're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.